So, okay, I just hit the record button. I'll put like an introduction at the beginning of this. So, let's just get right into the questions. First question is, who are you and where are you from?
Where am I from?
Yeah, and like who are you? What do you do? I mean,
Oh, okay.
yeah, it's a very general
Like,
question.
From birth?
Yeah, totally, totally.
Yeah, well, I was born in Altadena, in the foothills of the San Gabriel Mountains, which is sort of the country part of Pasadena.
Okay.
And it's 64. They call it Freedom Summer. And it was during, the civil rights movement in the South.
Right.
And I think that's important because, although, I was across the country, I think the general energy of the country at the time really influenced my, let's say, ego, the way I sort of get around in life. And I would say about that influence, I am about, the civil rights influence on, the time of my birth. I would say I'm quite the rebel.
Sure.
And I think that, if, we can look at anyone's birth and sort of generally speak about it like millennials, what was going on, in that part of the world when they were born and how that influences, the way they get around and their egos.
Sure.
It's very different from, 2 generations before that when I was born. I was the last of the baby boomers.
Sure.
And so I was always looking for another way to do things from the beginning. But I grew up pretty free as third child. My dad raised us. And I was sort of a wildflower. We walked to school a mile, maybe 2 sometimes, by ourselves and back. And then we were latchkey kids. So we spent a fair amount of time sort of unsupervised, being able to explore things without, parents, adults telling us what to do. So in large part, I think that helped, although, there are several implications about latchkey kids that you need to make those inferences about me.
Sure.
That maybe abandoned or neglected. It's all true. But at the same time, I was free. I didn't have a mother saying, say thank you or say please. And my father was pretty, he was a professional. He was an architect and left.
He was a what?
An architect.
Oh, an architect. Okay.
Mm-hmm. And he was at work and left me alone. And so I would say a big part of, my personality maybe is, was influenced by, say, neglect. But at the same time, I think I look around at, people from my generation who had both parents, and they're pretty...
Sure.
They had parents saying, telling them what to do.
Mm-hmm.
And as my 5-year-old told me once, when she was in trouble when they went to get her from school one day, she said, "You don't think you're right just because you're big, but you're not."
Yeah, that's what I tell my mom too. So is what then probably what influenced you to get into psychology? This leads into my next question of like, what's your background in health and why did you get into it?
So I was not interested in psychology in the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
I, as a latchkey kid, spent a fair amount of time in front of the TV. And my dad, being, somewhat of an intellectual, had the news on.
Okay, yeah.
And so I fantasized about anchoring the 5 o'clock or the 6 o'clock.
Right.
I wanted to be a journalist. And I rode that dream through college. I went, through college wanting to be, studying communication and broadcast journalism.
Mm-hmm.
And I held on to that through college. And it wasn't until later that I decided that I wanted to do something else. And it wasn't health and it wasn't psychology. It was just something else.
Okay.
And so I opened the catalog to Cal State classes, and I just told myself I wanted to be out of the corporate arena at that point. I'd been working for 10 years at the gas company, for energy. And I decided that that was not my life. I just knew I was unhappy with, the constraints of sort of lateral movement in the corporate world. And so I opened the catalog and I put my finger on the page. I closed my eyes.
Mm-hmm.
I opened the catalog, closed my eyes, and put my finger down. And I told myself, wherever my finger lands, that's what I was going to do.
Okay.
And it landed on psychology. Like, damn. I've never taken a psychology class. But that's where it began.
Okay.
So I did a master's program at Cal State in clinical psychology, focusing on development, human development. And that was relevant at the time in large part because I was pregnant and curious about that. But then I just started really to wonder more about what happened to my mother and, why she wasn't around. And I was thinking more about her mental health and, what I'd read about her diagnosis.
Mm-hmm.
And I was curious. I wanted to know more about, postpartum psychosis. What is that? So really it was my curiosity that led me more in depth into clinical psychology. I stayed with it. At that point, I was married to a professor at UCLA in academia.
Okay.
And I was ending my master's program. And so I was at a crossroads. I would need to either do a doctoral program if I wanted to stay in psychology, and or choose some other career. And so looking at the doctoral program and having an academic husband, I decided that I wanted to stay at academia, and so that steered me out of research, at least clinical research. And so I went forward into a doctoral program that focused on clinical applied psychology.
Okay.
So here I am.
And so would you say, oh gosh, my phone's going crazy. Okay. Would you say that you had like a sensitivity for it though, once you got into psychology and practice, just based off of your life experiences?
Did I have a sensitivity to it?
Like for, for working with people and understanding maybe some of the roots in their behavior and things like that.
No, I struggled.
Okay.
I was not sensitive to it. It didn't come naturally. It's not like, if you're a musician, you know it, and you have sort of natural talent.
Sure.
Or an artist, for example.
Well, it still takes work.
What's that?
I said, well, it still takes a lot of work either way.
With some people, you see, sort of a predisposition.
Right.
You just know that they have that knack.
Right.
And I think part of the disparity between, how you might characterize my knack or my natural propensity and the lack of it, that gap is because, and as measured by my, say, success, in school, and I didn't do well. I think part of that was, in the early years of my master's program, I think that was in large part because of the cultural disparity. That is, the the gap between my experience and what I was being told about,
Right.
what I was being taught about psychology. It didn't really.
Well, what year was this when you were in, or years were you in master school? I think you might have said this.
So yeah, I did a master's in 95 to 97.
Okay.
Yeah.
And
Just class. It was in a traditional psychology program. Pretty straightforward, dynamic approach.
okay.
Psychodynamic approach, object relations oriented, Eurocentric psychology.
What was that last word? Neurocentric?
Pardon?
What was the last word you said? Neurocentric?
I said Euro.
Oh, Eurocentric.
Yeah, Eurocentric
Okay.
sort of psychology, and more specifically, Eurocentric clinical analysis. That is, I didn't know this until later, but in hindsight, I recognize that I think most of what I was being taught colored me as sort of a pathological person, somebody that was diseased and broken.
Uh-huh.
To give you an example, the APA, the American Psychological Association, in the 50s, classified, as early as late as the 50s, classified, some of the, let's say, minority persons' behaviors as abnormal.
Oh, sure.
In large part because a lot of the clinical data was collected on mainstream, white populations.
Uh-huh.
And so, of course, my experience fell out of the bell curve. And so it didn't really, I was, coming out of a master's program feeling like I was more broken and more diseased.
Oh,
and
gosh.
it just didn't make sense to me that I could be so abnormal and feel okay.
Right.
Yeah.
And didn't you say you worked in a hospital, like as a clinical psychology or a psychologist? Like I remember you talking when we talked before that you said you had like quite a few patients and it was really overwhelming.
Yeah. So when I did different internships throughout my doctoral program.
Okay.
I did a short stint as a clinical social worker at a hospital here in LA, where they take people on 5150s, lock them up for 72 hours to a month.
Right.
And so that was sort of insightful. But later, when I actually found the Biofeedback Institute of Los Angeles in tutelage with the Toomims, I was really put to work with many, many patients, like close to 100 a month.
Wow.
With, board and care. And they had, these very severe pathologies that really, I was told on one hand, could be treated or amended with psychology or psychotherapy. But on the other hand, I could see that the system that was paying me to treat them really was not interested in their wellness. The system was dominated by the medical model and the pharmaceutical company, and they're focused on prescription drugs,
right,
and keeping patients sort of attached to that mode of care or mistreatment, more frankly.
Right. And yeah, I've noticed that if you're just looking at like neurochemical behavior and things like that, like that's often what the prescriptions are based off of. But then it's not a holistic approach.
Yeah, it's not. It's just a little piece of the picture.
Right.
But it was just more of the picture of clinical applied psychology that was going on in front of me and unfolding. And there was a part of me that just, I didn't really know any better, but just was unsatisfied with that. It's like, this is disaster.
Right. Well, Prozac was huge back then, and a bunch of other drugs. The 90s was pretty wild for that. Would you say it's gotten better or worse, though, in that respect? Like the over prescriptions and over medicalization, I'd say, of psychology. Like, would you say it's improved? Worse. Okay. And then that's what all the mental health statistics I've read seem to indicate too. I mean, this is stuff being put out by like the NIH and the US and the UK, and the WHO has pretty dark statistics for the world too, in terms of just people's mental health and how we're responding to it. And like one thing is that the WHO says that depression's like the leading disability in the world now. That's pretty wild to really think about, just that many people. It's like 3 to 500 million people. That's just with diagnoses.
That's huge. That like it takes your breath away if you take it at face value.
Right.
Within the context of within the context of the sort of if you accept say depression as a quote diagnosis, then it is staggering. Right. However, Josh, I think that there is a mental health myth. I think that we're all being duped.
Sure.
To believe that we have these, say, abnormalities that are actually very normal responses to the world in which we live.
Right, like grief is a very normal thing, but we often, we over medicalize it. And a lot of older people, get put on like antidepressants after their husband dies or wife dies or something, and it seems to really mess with just your natural healing process. And, but at the same time, I guess one of the things I see in these sort of like mass diagnostic statistics is that it still indicates that a lot of people are really struggling and they're not necessarily getting the right help for it, especially if potentially being led into a system that might be rather than actually helping them heal.
That's my take on it. That,
sure.
Basically, that depression as a sort of clinical diagnosis is misleading. It's natural to feel depressed with the amount of stressors that we're confronted with on a daily basis.
Right.
We're bombarded with, sort of misrepresentations of the world in all forms.
Absolutely.
And if that's not enough, specific racial minority groups, how that, tenfold, that sort of beating down, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
Real and imagined, I think to a certain extent, there is a lot of, let's say, for conversational purposes, for the point of conversation, there is real depression.
Right.
However, as you alluded to, there are depressed states that we go in and out of, that are associated with grief and, sort of the daily ebb and flow of life.
Right.
When somebody dies, we feel sad. Maybe we do feel depressed. But that doesn't mean let's throw a drug at me and let's get rid of it.
Right.
We need more education about how to deal with that low point.
Right.
There was recently my son had his friend over and we were talking about his seizure activity. And, I was trying to get him, like, tuned into, like, a home training unit, right?
Mm-hmm.
EEG and HEG, sort of a whole brain thing like Pete does, right?
Mm-hmm.
But home training simplified, not with Pete's system is pretty complicated. There are other EEG training protocols that are far less expensive and not so dynamic. In other words, they can't be changed on the fly, but still, I think, effective.
Right.
And, so anyway, I was talking to my son's friend, trying to make a pitch, and I was asking, he said he had seizures, so, the onset was just as he moved away from home, went to boarding school. I said, oh, wow, that's interesting. And he was like, why is that interesting? Well, the stress of going away from home the first time in your life and the beginning of seizure, he didn't see the correlation.
Mm-hmm.
And then later in our discussion, I was like, during that time, I remember you were talking about, like, some rough times with your girlfriend about that time too, that the seizure started.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like, yeah, but what's that?
Did he not, he didn't have any, like, head injuries or anything like that?
Nope.
Okay, wow. I've met a person that had, like, onset epilepsy like that too, and their story was that they had, like, 4 kids and a house they couldn't afford, and the husband had just gotten fired, so everything was really stressful at that time in their life. And they're really nice people, but then these seizures started. She'd started having absence and tonic-clonic seizures, and then her doctor wouldn't take it seriously. It's like I don't know. So I don't know what happened, but it took her a long time, I think, to get help for it.
The point is that stress has a profound impact on the brain, and
Right.
I think more people have. You may call it epilepsy. This kid did. He was. I remember Isaiah, my son, telling me that he was on the ground having a grand mal seizure.
Mm-hmm.
But I think more people than not have these focal seizures that aren't where they're not convulsing on the ground. And it's really, there are no real visual symptoms, but they are seizuring, right? And if you were to look at an EEG at the time of the seizure, it could be confirmed. But, and more of this is coming out in trauma work. In other words, what I'm saying is, this kid, as it turns out, was adopted.
Mm-hmm.
Abandoned at birth, early trauma, right?
Okay.
So he's had a fair amount of trauma in his life. However, somewhat paradoxically, he was adopted early by a very, very famous movie star that has privileged this kid, right? Mm-hmm. Which brings up another point, sort of tangential, but I'll mention it in passing, that even privilege is stressful.
Oh, sure.
There's a high percentage of BPD in kids that come out of Stanford, Harvard, Yale, these people that don't self-regulate well.
Borderline or bipolar?
Bipolar.
Okay.
Sorry. Yeah.
Oh, I just wanted
bipolar.
to clarify. Okay. That's interesting.
Yeah. They don't know what to do when they don't get their way.
Oh,
when
sure.
things don't go their way. They're used to having their way, but when things don't go their way, there's a real electrochemical signature that corresponds with that. It looks like, bipolar.
Mm-hmm. How much of that could be based off of like I don't know. I've noticed that like with bipolar and like manic episodes, your perception of the world gets wildly distorted, and then when those expectations aren't met, generally there's a pretty negative response. Like generally the person has a pretty negative response to that.
That's exactly what I'm talking about.
Right.
That's what I'm talking about.
But then you're saying the stress is what's pushing them into these manic states, or just the bipolar,
right.
The swings anyway.
Well, I think just a life, chemistry, circumstances, coupled by chemistry,
Sure.
that that set the situation up. And this is stressful. It's inorganic not to face your consequences, not to be responsible for your actions along the way.
Right.
It's not normal, let's say.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that's even the right word, but, you use a dish, you wash it, right?
Right. It's the mind-body connection, I think, is kind of what we're getting at here.
Right. You sort of, there's a natural response to sort of being, in the world. And if that is out of balance, then I think the organism is going to feel stressed as a result of it. Now, it may not be talked about, but look, we all know that there's a huge percentage of drug use in privileged schools.
Oh God, Adderall is everywhere. It's awful.
That's what I'm saying. That is so.
Oh, I know exactly what you're talking about then. Yeah, I've seen this.
Yeah.
Like cigarettes and Adderall and alcohol, man. These people don't realize what they're doing to their bodies, and like their mood swings they're really apparent.
But the question is, Josh, why are they okay? So we use drugs. I love a beer at the end of the day, and and when I go to my friend's house, I'll have a cigarette.
Oh, sure.
And sometimes a bong hit because it's fun, right? It's a long day, and that takes the edge off.
Of course.
So I'm not talking about I don't want to bash abuse.
Right, but we're talking about like chronic use.
That's
where it's like an impulse. Okay. It's an impulsive thing, and it's not just some we're enjoying at the moment. I mean, they're enjoying it, but it's a impulsive thing.
That's right. And so, but we have to ask. So I'm telling you, I'm stressed out at the end of the day. I have 6 mouths to feed at home, 3 grandkids. These skinny monsters show up, and now I'm stressed out. So okay, so I need to take the edge off. It's not the most sort of maybe healthy way, but that's how I do it now. However, why are these kids, these privileged kids, needing to check out? Why aren't they wanting to be here now?
Right.
Because the stress of being here now is too much.
Right, and the unknowns and everything.
So we have to ask, well, why is the stress in these privileged kids' lives too much? And I can just, deduce that the privileged life is not the best way to live, right? There's something imbalanced about it.
Well, specifically what? Like, it's not the resource availability necessarily, but it's something about your perception in it, right?
That's right, and how that goes. So, anyway, we were talking about, the disparity between what I was taught, textbook psychology, and what I recognized in the world.
Right.
And I think, I don't think I was well socialized. I didn't go along with things very easily.
Okay.
And so, I could see beyond the ruse. I didn't know what else there was. I just was not happy with what I was being taught. And I think part of that, showed up in my progress, my ability to really achieve and say, get the A. I didn't believe what I was reading when I wasn't motivated to get the A.
Right.
And that's really what I'm saying about, sort of the disparity between, the prevailing notion of applied psychology and,
right.
What I was taught.
Yeah,
also,
I know what you mean.
I was saying, sorry?
I said, I know what you mean.
Yeah.
Like,
and just one last thought about that. I just want to say that, I think I don't know if I finished this thought, but I'll just finish it now. As I was saying, the APA had diagnosis fairly recently that pathologized ethnic minority behaviors, right?
Like what specifically? What specifically?
Well, in the African American community, there are higher rates, say, of depression. There in ethnic minority communities, there are higher rates of psychosis. Is this really psychosis that needs to be pathologized, or is this the result of? Is this a normal response to police brutality and repression.
Right, and all this economic disparity and
right, etc.
Right. Well, even today, it's like I think for Black families in the U.S., it's like the average income's it's like zero or something really crazy, which is totally different from white populations.
Yeah, I mean, even for me, I mean, people don't, you know, I keep up. I'm a psychologist, right? I don't know any other Black psychologist in LA.
Wow.
Wow,
that's
you know,
that's pretty.
Not to say there aren't any.
Right.
Yeah. Right, but it's not a popular field. Clinical psychology, in particular, is not a popular field for Black and brown people, and I think in large part because of the way that the material played out, which sort of doesn't favor me or the ethnic minority population, and I think sort of deep down, it's not
very conscious.
What's that?
It's not very socially conscious.
That's right.
Yeah, I noticed that too. I mean, I guess for me, a lot of my psych classes were more like a lesson in how to be an HR person and not not how to really look into really help a person.
Right.
Okay, so
the AP.
Oh, sorry.
One last thing. Yeah. So I know I haven't looked this up, but I've heard that there was a diagnosis given to slaves that ran away. They were also pathologized.
Right.
If you wanted to escape, you were somebody would throw the book at you. There's something wrong with you.
Oh wow.
Yeah. So a lot of what is going on in the mainstream in the field wasn't jiving with what I had a sense of, but didn't have an objective yardstick to measure up against. So it was very confusing in the beginning years, and I was really fortunate to find the Toomims, who were real humanitarians, actually, pioneers, giants in their field. But more personally, they were accepting and exemplary mentors. They knew exactly how to handle me.
Sure. And this was Herschel and his wife, right?
Right. Yeah. So Marjorie, as a clinical psychologist, Marjorie Toomims was also a psychologist, and she was my primary mentor early on and supervised 3,500 of my postdoctoral hours toward licensure as a psychotherapist.
Wow.
And so I was poised to take the test, took it, and failed for licensure. I was sick that day. It took me a lot of time to get the money together and study for the test. And then, you have to set the test date months in advance. And then, as I said, I was sick. I don't know if that's an excuse. But I just remember, thinking when I got out of there, that test wasn't designed for me to pass. And although I still am conflicted about licensure, I feel like the path I'm on as a non-licensed, let's say, practitioner is more true to who I think I am versus society wants me to be.
Sure. Yeah, I understand that perspective too. So, so then when did you start, what year did you start working with the neurofeedback and biofeedback?
Yeah, so in December of 1999, Marjorie interviewed me. After a 5-minute interview, she handed me a list of patients, 100 long, and said, go to work. And she was very soft-spoken. She had a light touch. Part of those patients, most of the patients were dual diagnosed in board and care. So they had pretty severe symptoms. And the other, say, quarter of that patient load were elderly patients in convalescence. And which, I had no idea how to be with. And I remember asking Marjorie one day, what do I do? And she said, just listen. So that's what I did. spent a lot of time listening. And then she died. And Herschel was there. And most of my work initially with Bila was out in the field. I was, sent around to new facilities to offer home care, as it were, or in-facility care. But when Marjorie died, the contract with the county died, so that was no longer feasible income.
And what year was
because
that?
I wasn't licensed. That was like 2005.
2005.
Yeah. And it was sort of a relief, Josh, because 75% of my work was paperwork. 25% of my work with these, 100 patients was, face contact. And, groups and individual therapy. And 75% of the time I was like taking notes and, filling in insurance forms. Right. And I hated it. I am not an administrative person. Yeah. And so I really grew more in disdain for the field of psychotherapy. And so, as I was saying, when she died and the money stream, which was quite lucrative, dried up, I was sent back to the lab, and I ended up with Herschel, who was doing more research and work on HEG. Okay. And so, it wasn't something at first I thought very much about because I was more focused on, psychotherapy. Right. But then, sort of by force and choice, I really liked Herschel. And as I said, he knew how to handle me, sort of as a mentor. He, how to support my growth. Right. He helped influence my interest in psychophysiology. Okay. And so that was in 2006, 2007. I started to work in the lab full time. And more closely focused on HEG. Now, I did not learn very much from Marjorie while she was alive about biofeedback, like peripheral biofeedback. But she left all of her books, all of her records, all of her clients for me. And I had to get to speed. Wow. So I became somewhat self-taught. I read her books, I read her notes, I learned from her patients all about, peripheral training. And that became really more prominent in my interest. So my interest was in marrying peripheral biofeedback with neurofeedback. As well as sort of integrating psychotherapy into the mix. So what psychotherapy?
Like what kinds of peripheral neurofeedback or biofeedback?
Yeah, so Marjorie pioneered a technique called active biofeedback, and it's a combination of psychotherapy and peripheral biofeedback using temperature and skin conductance primarily. Okay. But also EMG. Okay. And so there are, and I believe that Marjorie was really the only one. She's, in fact, I don't know anybody else that's using peripheral training now in the field. So I'm the only one, as far as I know, that uses peripheral training in depth in a regular session. But because I'm not licensed, and really am not interested in that now, I'm using biofeedback tools and using coaching as a way to offer more dynamic insights about, interpretations to the psychophysiology. So it looks like a psychotherapy session. However, it's really a biofeedback session, right? With supportive coaching.
Sure.
And I don't really know one can do psychotherapy without more objective tools like what biofeedback offers.
Right.
For example, with skin conductance, Marjorie considered this a truth detector. Skin conductance is the technology is the basis for the lie detector, for the polygraph.
Right.
But I use it as a truth detector, as Marjorie indicated. The body doesn't lie, and when you have electrodes on the hand, and a client is speaking, their discourse should follow the direction of the slope of the signal, the skin conductance signal. And if it doesn't, it says so much about what's going on. And many interpretations can be made about skin conductance as well as temperature and the way that those slopes go in a session, as well as EMG. So it just sort of clarifies what is going on unconsciously in the client's mind,
right,
as they're sitting for a session, and makes more apparent without real arguments. You can't, like, the numbers don't lie.
right.
But I think for many clients, socializing them to using peripheral biofeedback in a session is a hurdle, because usually somebody that's coming in for psychotherapy is not really interested in biofeedback, and vice versa. Somebody coming in for biofeedback is not really wanting to talk. They usually go explicit about that. Like, I don't want talk therapy, I just want biofeedback. Or even neurofeedback. But even in neurofeedback, say you're doing alpha theta training, that is going to require a fair amount of emotional support as the client builds this alpha bridge. That is, they stand on sort of the threshold of their conscious mind in alpha, looking down into their subconscious mind into theta. And they start to recognize who they are. And this, it's a joyful experience,
Right.
sort of unveiling oneself.
Right.
However, many people, if they don't recognize their authentic self as it emerges, and sometimes, I should say more often, having some, let's say, coaching or support in that unfolding process is really required. And that's just alpha theta. So
it's what? Self.
I'm sorry. That's just, I just said, and that's in just the alpha theta protocol.
Oh, okay, alpha theta. So is in like EEG brainwaves?
I didn't understand your question, Josh.
So I mean, I'm just trying to clarify this stuff so it's clear to people listening. So alpha theta protocol is in, you're looking at EEG results, right?
Oh yeah, sorry about that. Yeah, so I was talking about using biofeedback in session, peripheral biofeedback. But then I suggested that, and I was saying that in peripheral training, emotional support is essential. That's why it's really a good marriage. But also, it's pretty essential. Emotional support is pretty essential in neurofeedback training as well, and in particular alpha theta. And that was what I was just talking about. So in alpha theta training, I don't know how much you know about that. Alpha is the bridge to the unconscious mind, and alpha is also like the sort of pure awareness state, and it's like the lack of alpha that precludes an individual from sort of looking into their subconscious mind and processing that material. And it's the lack of alpha that keeps people also stuck in beta, that sort of anxiety state.
Okay.
So if you can think alpha is the bridge between beta and theta, that meditative state alpha. And if that bridge, it can be a bridge where, one can stand on it, as I described, but it can also be, as Pete describes, a drawbridge, where, somebody is stuck in alpha, that sort of idling state where they check out, and they can't sort of link their thinking mind with their intuitive mind.
Okay.
They can't think they can't link what they think with what they feel.
And the idea is
in
that
his study.
these different cognitive modes and like moods and stuff are correlated with heightened like activity in different frequencies in your brain.
Right.
Okay. Yeah, it's interesting. I don't know too much, but it's been around for a long time. Um, so then how did you start using the HEG?
Well, as I said, when I was spending more time in the office with Herschel, that's all we did really is HEG.
Mm-hmm.
And, for the first 5 years, we were collecting data and, just pushing sort of HEG applications in sort of expanding HEG applications. For example, we learned to use HEG and psychotherapy. We used psychotherapy as a way for the individual to get in touch with the way they were feeling as they were doing the HEG.
Right.
So we were able to use psychotherapy to link, the feeling in the body, the sensation in the body with what was happening with HEG in the moment, so that the individual could sort of draw on that, the feeling resource to fuel the signal, as it were. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. So that's one thing. One of the first things that came out of working with Herschel. One of Herschel's last, let's say, discoveries, and he did write a patent for it, although I don't know if he ever finished it, was discovered that there were regulators along the prefrontal cortex that could be trained to, say, remediate certain challenges.
Like anxiety, for example?
Exactly. So if you train at, say, F7, that there's an emotion regulator there. He discovered FPZ in the front of the head was a very good place to train for OCD on the left side. On the right side, depression.
Okay.
So we were fine-tuning those correlates, just say, where you could train in association or in correlation to certain challenges.
Mm-hmm. And
so that
he also,
sorry?
well, because I read a couple of his papers, and didn't he sort of make this inference from looking at like how the brain's actually wired and where like different wiring regions go to like your midbrain, for example, or like your amygdala?
Yeah, so he was able to demonstrate a strong correlation between training in the prefrontal region and connection or control over the amygdala. Exactly.
Okay.
Train the amygdala directly, but there are strong connections between the prefrontal area at FPZ and deeper brain structures like the amygdala. Yeah.
That's so fascinating. So what, like, how did this then improve like the treatment process for people? And I especially think about like long-term results, because that's a lot of what our interest is.
Ask your question again.
Oh, sorry. So discovering these techniques, how did that like improve treatments for people?
So, as I suggested, Herschel was really interested in research.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't say that during that, let's say, era of working with him, that we had a lot of successes in terms of improvement. I would say we had more successes in terms of determining what worked and what didn't work.
Okay.
Herschel...
So it was still just a trial and error period in a lot of ways.
Right, exactly. And I would say Herschel was really interested in teaching the client about the research. So he would err on giving the client too much information, let's say,
Okay.
about the science, about the research, whether or not they wanted it or not.
Right.
Yeah, and so how did that affect their healing? Well, I think in terms of empowering them with knowledge, it was helpful.
Mm-hmm.
Overall, it was helpful. Also, I must say that, the clients that Herschel and I shared, which were most of the clients that came in between, say, 2006 and the time of his death, we would see together, and they would prefer Herschel.
Mm-hmm.
And it always left me sort of confused, this old fart that, sort of smells funny sometimes. But Herschel, you know how old people get.
Yeah, of course.
But there's something else too. There's some wisdom. There's something that you can't. There's some intangible there that can't be sort of quantified, sort of visually or even numerically in any way. Many of Marjorie's clients wanted to see her. Even, they'd call and they'd come to see me. And now Marjorie, at the end of her career, she died of a heart attack. The board was after her; they were investigating her.
Oh gosh!
But I think she died of a broken heart because I think she realized she was doing the right thing, but maybe she wasn't dotting her I's or something. I don't know.
Sure.
Anyway, what I'm saying about that is, she was old too, and she would sit in a session and maybe even fall asleep, and they didn't care. They just wanted to be in the room with her. So, and there was a certain magic that these people had that people really wanted, and it didn't matter if it was wrapped in research or a sleeping clinician. They just wanted to be in the room with these people.
Well, so I'm trying to think of how. So would you say that your sort of your unconscious self healing, self management, self recognition processes, and your conscious, I guess. Well, because when you're working with the HEG, you see the changes in the blood flow, and then you're able to make inferences into how that correlates with your state of mind at that moment and your emotions, right? And would you say that you're getting this? Would you say it's bringing out a much deeper recognition in people that they might not necessarily get otherwise, because you're getting that biofeedback in tandem with, I guess, it's positive psychology and some other, and therapeutic work. Sorry, I'll make that clear. Would you say whatever recognition people are getting of themselves from doing this biofeedback or neurofeedback, do you think that is it's sort of this important mind-body connection that is generally undeveloped in people?
Yeah, that's what I was alluding to with my son's friend, who didn't know that his stress had anything to do, and it was still at the end of our discussion, which lasted an hour. He just was completely dumbfounded about how his stress could have any possible correlation with his seizure.
Uh-huh.
He didn't see it. And so absolutely people slowly become more sort of knowledgeable about the mind-body connection. But this is the fault of the way we educate, our people.
Mm-hmm.
And this is a shortcoming in the way that we raise children. We don't teach them enough about the mind-body connection.
Right.
And so most people are Johnny-come-lately to understanding how what they think is actually manifesting in their body in a way, or what's manifesting in their body
mm-hmm.
comes through in the way that they think. They just don't always see that. But yes, to answer your question, the whole biofeedback process, whether it's neurofeedback and or biofeedback, helps absolutely raise awareness about how much is going on below the surface and how much more these they have control over their system once they're taught the correlation between, say, what they're thinking and what they're feeling.
Right.
I think that the real, let's say, handicap that most people come in with is that they've been educated well above the neck.
Right.
And they're relatively anesthetized from, say, the neck down.
Mm-hmm.
They don't feel their body.
Well, you even think about like the English language in a lot of ways, and the way it's spoken these days. It's very like in your mouth, like cerebral. I don't know. I've noticed how different languages they use your body in different ways, and that seems to also correlate with I guess how cerebralized a person is and not really connected with themselves. It's just the thing.
Yeah, it's really unfortunate, and you see it in the way people breathe. I mean, just as simple as
absolutely.
Just like follow the ball. So we're doing heart rate variability training with the heart math. Okay, and there's a ball. It's the coherence coach, and all they need to do is follow the ball. As the ball goes down, they exhale. As the ball goes up, they inhale. So what do? As the ball goes up, they're supposed to be inhaling, right? And so as they inhale, the stomach goes out. They fill up their diaphragm like a balloon.
Right.
That's what is the natural sort of breath pattern. But once they start to think about it or even follow the ball, the coach, what do? They inhale, and then their stomach flattens, or their chest flattens usually.
Right.
And then and then the ball goes down. And then you see them inhale into their chest, typically. So just the coordination between, sort of once they start to think about it, is it seems to get confusing easily,
right.
Which is, I think, a real reflection of the lack of tethering between the mind and the body, or the brain and the body function. Like,
right.
You have a mind in your toe. Just your toe, your mind. If you're thinking about your toe, that's where your mind is right now, right?
Right.
But I think there are too many in there. I think there are too many distractions, for one thing. But I was going to say too many of those pills that anesthetize the body and sort of cut one's consciousness off to it so that it's not easily accessible. A lot of people don't even know how to. Do you know how to dance, Josh?
Yeah. I mean, sort of. I've done ballroom and all that.
What's that?
I said I've taken ballroom lessons and all that. And my middle school teachers were really big on that.
Well, when I was thinking about dancing, it was sort of a trick question. Do you know how to dance? Of course you know how to dance. you know how to move. You know how to move. And I wasn't thinking about, sort of structured dance. I was just like, free form, like moving your body around.
Sure.
To a beat. But
I don't dance like that. It has to be structured. You get me moving like that. I'll line dance. There you go.
What's that?
I said line dancing. That's fun. It's not that fun.
That's fun. It is fun. It's fun. Yeah, it's fun. Just moving your body,
it's about the people.
Right?
It's about the people for me. Anyway, what were we talking about?
People don't. Well, just like being able to be in the body without being self-conscious.
Right.
Without sort of getting stiff. We sit around in our cars, get stiff if we're out to move. Yeah. So I think we're really emotional retards, and it shows up in our lack. We are.
Right.
We're not. We're cut off from all of that, and from the way we feel in our bodies. Right. So we only get half the picture. And part of it is a culture. We herald, doctors, smart lawyers and people that go to school for many years, that we sort of relegate people that are in their body to lower positions and less esteemed sort of reputation.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and I know like our education, because of people's spiritual differences, there's often not like it's like we won't go too deep in public school classes, but then it's also somehow leads you away from like understanding your body more. And I don't know. There's something with like different spiritual upbringings too, and sort of how you learn to relate to your body. And this country definitely has a big issue with that.
What do you mean?
Well, so I've noticed that, let's see, how do I put it? It's like if you're there's, I don't like the prosperity gospel. Okay, like it's a thing that tells you that like, I mean, I'm bastardizing this, but basically, if the more money you have, the more closer to God you are. Okay, and then like that's like abhorrent to someone like me, where I like my conception of God is like the universe, and for me, getting closer is to like go out in the woods and chill out and have joy, and it's not this totally removed thing that's essentially arbitrary, right? It's a cultural construct, and like that also seems to very much impact, I think, our general sense of ourselves. Well, there's like your sensory processing gets really out of whack because your expectations are just way off.
Yeah, you're right, because we're not looking in the right direction, so it causes a real chasm, an internal chasm.
Right.
Yeah, we're looking out there when we need to be looking inside.
Right.
We're the yardstick, as society has indicated, is out there in terms of how much, what it looks like, how fast it goes, etc. And how much money you have, how much you can do with that.
Right.
Which is an external yardstick, which is, cannot be ever, like, let's say, achieved, because the yardstick is always changing. And what a mindfuck.
Right.
Yeah.
It's like
bring it back to nature.
Right. It's like, where are you? It's like you're not just present, but like, where are you present? Like, I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
So okay, so then I gotta start wrapping this up because I gotta get going in 20 minutes. But so my next question is like, what essential? I want to highlight more information about the HEG. So, what essential or exciting thing do you want people to know about HEG, neurofeed, or HEG, or like related brain science, like with cerebral blood flow or whatever? I'd like your personal and professional opinions.
What do I want people to know?
Like, is there anything specific, like when you think of HEG, right? Like, what is there anything specifically exciting you want to share, like from your work and your experience? It's really open-ended. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I know after I hang up, I'm going to like think, oh, gee, I want to say this. So
please
like
email me.
Sure I'm going to call you back or text you.
That's perfectly fine. The more, the better.
Yeah. That's sort of the way my mind works. But, when you first said that, I thought, okay, well, we just need to keep it simple. Brain, exercise, work.
Sure.
Right?
Right.
And the way to exercise the prefrontal cortex, there is no other way that I know to specify exercising particular modules of the prefrontal cortex except with HEG.
Okay. That's really, like it's like asynchronous blood flow up there, so we can control it in different spots.
If you want to increase metabolism to the executive center of the brain, that's your prefrontal region, the only way I know to do it is to, if you want to increase the function, if you want peak performance, as a result of your training, then exercise your brain, exercise the prefrontal cortex, and do that with HEG.
Sure.
It really does target that metabolic function that will send more oxygen to that region and get the job done. EEG won't do that because because of the artifact. You can't train the prefrontal region because of the eyeballs moving around and the muscles from the face.
Mm-hmm.
So it just seems like it's such an elegant system. It's so,
right.
It's so easy.
Right.
It's so intuitive, easy, natural.
Right. It's just your breathing and your blood flow. And your temperature too is the thing.
It's elegant. It's
right.
not complicated. It doesn't take paste or glue. I'm doing more training with these consumer systems, these end user systems, home training, EEG.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll occasionally putting paste on the electrodes and putting that on the scalp. But it's a mess. And I remember Herschel saying, that was one of his first sales lines to me as I went to, different conventions with him, is you don't need any paste or glue. And I had never done EEG before HEG, so I didn't even know what he was talking about. Like, of course you're not going to put paste or glue in your hair. But it's a mess.
Yeah.
It's sort of inorganic that way. Who wants a lot of paste in their hair?
Right,
Not
right.
Cool. So that's just sort of superficial. But, what I think the biggest thing that's come out of the training that can make it more sort of fruitful, more effective, and overall more holistic is, as I said,
mm-hmm.
The connection between the sensation in the body and the switch that gets it going, that where you increase the signal and you get feedback.
Mm-hmm.
There's many people are in their head still with it, like they don't get the sensation. And I think that is, you know what I'm talking about.
Right.
The feeling that goes along with, say, the signal.
Right.
Increase.
I've done, just from building these things and testing them, I've done probably 100 something sessions at this point. And I noticed how from the beginning, I really did seem to gain this internal recognition. And so now I'm able to respond to stress better. It's like I don't click into panic mode as easily. It's like subtle, but it is noticeable. And it really does seem to be the self-regulatory thing.
It sounds like you have better executive control. That's the point, right?
Right.
Yeah. So you're not, sort of flying off the hook as easily.
Right. Well, and there's a sense of presence too, and that's also, it's indescribable. It's one of those things where it's a personal experience, but then you can see the physiological relations and oh yeah, if you get stressed out, up to 90% of the blood flow can leave your frontal cortex. It's holy crap. It literally shuts down. And you can see that when people have panic attacks or they're reliving trauma or something. And, it's interesting. Yeah.
Well, you said it. I think it's the present. And, that has, so alpha brainwaves, 8 to 12 hertz, more or less, is alpha. And as I said earlier, alpha is associated with that unfiltered, pure consciousness.
Sure.
It's where the master meditators go. They go right into alpha, and then they have that. They get into alpha, and then they have that theta crossover very soon after that.
Huh.
But they're in alpha now. So how does alpha correlate with HEG? And from what I've seen is that at about 12 to 13 hertz, so you're getting alpha and theta now, is where you get the best results from HEG training. So it's high alpha, right?
Uh-huh.
Like, or low beta. We don't want too much beta. We don't want too much sort of consciousness, or too much sort of
like
too much
narrowness.
Too much. Right. It's sort of, it's an open focus.
Right.
It puts on the gas for sure.
Well, you're ready. You know, it's like you're ready.
Yeah.
You're
ready. That's a good way to put it. You're ready.
So, that's great. Yeah, and then if whatever else you think of, just email or call me. So, okay, then last question, another very open-ended one is what gets you out of bed in the morning?
The gimme monsters.
the what monsters?
The spoiled kids that are living with me.
Oh, sure.
They call them gimme monsters.
Oh, sure.
Do you remember the movie Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory?
Of course.
And there is a girl who wants the golden egg, Daddy. Buy it for me now, Daddy. Right?
So these kids are.
Yeah.
There's this great song. It's by a radio host. It's called "The 12 Pains of Christmas." You should listen to it.
All right, I'll look it up.
It's relevant.
Well, I don't do Christmas anymore, frankly, but I get what you're talking about.
Sure.
So, what gets me out of bed? So, what motivates me? You know what I'm really focused on, Josh? I want to make Goldmine Brain Gym happen.
Mm-hmm.
This is Herschel's dream, to bring HEG to the market, to get it out there as, as a common tool, like a pencil.
Right.
And I'm really focused on putting a mobile brain gym together.
Cool.
And I just made a leap forward this week. I was focused on getting like a 24-foot, truck,
mm-hmm.
a box truck.
Oh wow!
And putting a cool wrap on it, and doing some marketing with some schools or community centers, or even maybe not doing it formally, but informally, like outside of farmers market, where people are standing around. Combining it with some other self-regulation interventions, some really cool apps where people could, I don't know if you're using NeuroSky headband or even the Muse headband, but these are really cool and consumer-grade instruments with some really cool BCI apps,
mm-hmm.
Some of which are free. A lot of people don't know how to use these things, and I think just the draw of being able to see your brain waves like in front of you with a headband that you can slip on would be really cool. I'm just sort of fine tuning how to present, what the protocol is,
right?
To get people in and to get them coming back,
right?
But that's what really gets me up.
Mm-hmm.
I have the baton, and it does it. It's just in my hand, and
mm-hmm.
I feel so driven to, make Herschel's dream happen. It's so effortless. I mean, I don't even have to make myself. It's not a chore to think about how I'm going to do this. It's a joy when I have a few minutes to, move forward with the dream.
Right.
And so, often in the morning, that's one of the first things I think about. How am I going to get that done? How am I going to move closer to bringing it to market in whichever form? And I'm so happy that the State Changer apps are downloadable.
Yep.
And when we're just coming closer to that point where it's happening, and it's so exciting.
Yeah, you should be able to try those with the prototype that shows up too. My kits are almost identical to the State Changer in terms of the hardware. So,
Cool. Well, there's one that's attached to a headband in here now. Bob had it out on the counter for a bit, but we haven't been able to cross paths recently, so I could use it. But I couldn't download the app on his phone, so I couldn't be here.
mhm.
And yeah, we want the kit.
Yeah, it's on its way. Oh. Yeah, and then in terms of the dream, I mean, however I can help, my prerogative here is to try to bring the cost down to next to nothing, essentially, and I've got the things in motion for that. So, yeah.
So say again how the kit is comparable to the state changer, and what's the crossover? I don't know what you and Pete have been doing.
So the kit, like that's what I was able to do, a year ago, right? And right now, that's about my skill level, is to be able to produce essentially a developer kit that, it's not perfect, but it does get the job done, and I've had really reliable results. And then for Pete, because he's been working for like 4 years apparently trying to get a new state changer, and he's been through like 3 or 4 different like engineers or groups of engineers, and he didn't have success. So like he flew me down in April to go talk to him, and I literally built like a kit right in front of him and put it on his head, and he's like, "Oh, this seems to work." And then I told him I was an amateur, but he wanted to keep working with me. And so then I set about turning my, essentially, like to rapidly prototype stuff. I just turned my kit into like it's just an all-in-one headband now. Well, the state changer prototype, I just put it all together in one headband and added like an extra sensor array. And now I'm working on something, you'll see these, but now I'm working on something that it's using like more up-to-date, like it's all FDA medical grade pulse oximetry hardware, and then it's set up to be an HEG. So like I'm just working on developing like a consumer product for him. But then my plan with my kits, and I told Pete this is my plans to actually come up with something that is essentially like a $5 or $10 HEG, and like that's what I'm moving towards. But I have to take stepping stones because of my skill level and my resource pool. I'm very slowly gaining like team members and people that want to help me realize this, because I agree that this thing should be like, it should just be everywhere. And right now, like pulse oximeters are everywhere, but part of the reason for that is because they don't cost $800, right? You can get them for $5 or $10 at Best Buy or off online. And the HEG is essentially the exact same technology, just applied differently. You could generalize it as a deep tissue pulse oximeter if you really wanted. Although for the neurofeedback, we're looking at the like change in overall like volume of oxygenated blood. But it's the same technology, and so I think it should be available to the same degree, and so that's what I'm working towards.
I like what you're doing. I think that. That's cool. Congratulations.
Thanks.
You've come so far.
Getting there.
Well, I'm happy that that we met, that you contacted us, now 2 years ago, and that, that you connected with Pete, and that, that you're working, it sounds like, on sort of parallel projects, although I couldn't tell from the way you put it out there just now. Are you still working together now on the state changer? Or?
Yeah. But it's like it's all leveraging like the open source. The only thing that's like particular to his project is that I built a much nicer sensor. Because like for the kits to work, I don't need anything special. But for his, he wants this something to be like clinical grade. So I designed something clinical grade. But like the current HEGs and the kits, once I figure out like a more professional looking like setup for it, and instead of just something that's clearly, you know, handmade. It'll be the same thing. It'll just be really cheap.
Are you talking about like the packaging, the sort of?
Yeah, like right now it's something that you build. Right. Well, and the other thing is like the PCBs. It's all built by hand, and so like, you know, it's hard to make that consistent as a product. But as a developer kit, that's exactly what you expect. Like for virtual reality, those Oculus Rift headsets, they started out as like a $400 prototype, and they essentially sold that on the promise that you're going to get a fancy one a few years later. What they sent you was a prototype that you had to tape together yourself with duct tape and solder it, but it worked just enough to get things in motion and to get people actually developing the field more. Which is like my other goal with this is to actually lead to a lot more development and research and stuff that's done in a more open manner. Just because, you know, I think this is fundamental science, and it essentially belongs to everybody. And we gotta shape the product to be that too.
Well, I'm just delighted that you stay true to your mission. That's really important, and I hear that consistency in what you're saying.
Thank you.
I wanted to ask about your mushroom business.
Oh yeah,
how's that going?
So it's going pretty well. It's slow going. Like the summer we foraged so many mushrooms, and like we found all these mushrooms that are really rare in the rest of the US, but they just grow like weeds up here, and they're incredibly delicious. And so now we're looking into like how to cultivate those. It's a species called Hericium coralloides. I'll just send you some photos, but it's a cousin of this mushroom called lion's mane, which is this little puffball mushroom, and it's got all these like tentacles on it. And but the coralloides, it looks like this weird. It looks like a coral like beard thing. Like it grows off the tree like in tentacles, and it's really white, so it sticks out like a sore thumb. But it tastes incredible. It tastes like a lobster or shellfish dish, and then all you have to do is like stir fry it in butter to make it taste good. And then, but then what's really fascinating is that they're finding they're called nerve growth factors, and there's something that like are used to catalyze like dendrite growth and white matter growth, and the Hericium has it in massive abundance. And then this particular species of Hericium, the coralloides, is it actually tastes good, so it's a bonus. So it's just, I don't know, it's just interesting stuff. Like, you know, we don't know how far we'll get with any of this, but there's a lot of grant opportunities, and well, at least like get some kind of like small scale farm going. And then other than that, we just go out in the woods and forage, and it's a chill time.
Do you package the mushrooms for sale?
Yeah, we've got like bagged chaga, and we've got dried Hericium. Oh, I can send you some of that too. And then we're working on like tinctures and extracts and stuff. And like we've got one of our friends made a whole bunch of chaga salve for us, and that, I don't know, it's just like a coconut cream, but it's brown because it's chaga, and, but people like it. It's got a lot of.
You send some?
Yeah, totally. It's got a lot of melanin in it, so apparently your skin can use that. So I don't know. Yeah,
I'd be interested in tasting that.
Sure.
Chaga.
Yeah.
I picked up. Yeah, you know, are you retailing it or wholesaling it for retail?
Well, both. I mean, we just act as our own. We're primarily a wholesale company, but we act as our own retailer because it just makes sense. Wholesale just means you sell it at half the price. But I'll just send you some.
Yeah, are you in Whole Foods or?
Yeah, we're in the co-op here, and we're in like a couple health stores, and there's a couple people that like sell our stuff as part of their business, but they don't have like storefronts. And then we
Great.
we did the farmers market up here for the summer, and that was really fun.
Mm-hmm. Sounds like quite the life. Okay, I heard
It's a weird one.
you needed to. What's that?
I said it's a weird one. Yeah, I got to get out of here actually right now.
Yeah,
but
I heard you.
but it was great talking.
Okay.
And
Good to chat.
really appreciate
Josh.
it.
I'm glad that we connected. Yeah, and if I have some other ideas that I want to share, I'll text you or call you.
Yeah, please do. Please do.
About them. Yeah. But thanks for this humanitarian touch in your work. I appreciate you.
Well,
and, keep it up.
Thank you. Yeah, there's a lot of there's too much distance, I think, in development and research, and just between the people and the work. Because at the end of the day, we're all here because we care about people, and that's the heart of it.
Yeah, well, thanks for your big heart. Appreciate you.
All right. Well, take care.
Okay, well, we'll be in touch.
Yep. Bye-bye.